At Thanksgiving, my nephew yelled, "Mom says you're the broke one who never helps." Everyone laughed. I smiled and said, "Good. Then she won't need the $2,200 I send every month for her bills." My sister froze mid-bite, fork in the air. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about gratitude, right? About family and warmth and, I don't know, pumpkin pie. Mine started with a 7-year-old yelling across the table that I'm the broke one who never helps. We were halfway through dinner. The table was crowded with turkey and cranberry sauce and half-baked opinions. My brother Mark was already half a bottle into the cheap wine he brought, and my sister Diane was doing her usual act, talking about how hard things have been lately and how she's doing her best. I kept quiet like I always do, just trying to get through the meal without drama. And then her son Josh yells that loud, confident, like he was proud to say it, "Mom says you're the broke one who never helps." Everyone at the table burst out laughing like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Even Mark, who doesn't pay child support for his own daughter, but somehow finds money for poker nights, laughed too. Not even an ounce of embarrassment. I didn't say anything right away, just smiled. I looked at Diane, then I said, "Good. Then she won't need the $2,200 I send every month for her bills." The laughter stopped like someone had cut the power. Diane froze mid-bite. Her fork literally stuck in the air. No one moved. Mark blinked at me like I'd started speaking German. Josh went quiet, eyes darting between his mom and me like he wasn't sure if he was in trouble. I didn't wait for anyone to react. I finished chewing, set my napkin down, and kept eating like I hadn't just dropped a bomb on the table. After dessert, Diane cornered me in the kitchen while everyone else was pretending not to stare. She tried to play it off, said Josh must have misunderstood, said she'd never call me broke. I just nodded and told her not to worry. I'd canceled the December transfer already. She started to panic, asked what she was supposed to do about the mortgage. I told her she was smart. She'd figure it out. Then I walked out, didn't even take leftovers. On the drive home, I didn't turn on music, just sat in silence, thinking, remembering the time Diane called me crying because her car got repossessed and I paid off the balance. The time Josh needed dental work and I covered the $1,400 bill without blinking. The private school tuition payments that hit my account every August like clockwork. All the times I told myself I was helping family, that it would come back around someday, that they appreciated it. But they didn't. They pitied me, or worse, mocked me behind my back in front of their kids. I got home and poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and pulled up every bank transfer I'd made to Diane since 2022. I made a list. Each month, each amount. $76,450 in total. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I deleted her from my Zelle contacts and shut the laptop. The thing is, I used to think kindness was something you gave without expecting anything in return. I still believe that, but I also believe in self-respect. And somewhere along the way, I'd let them confuse the two. Mark had lost his job again a few months ago, third one this year. I'd paid his rent twice since June. He didn't even say thank you, just told me he'd pay me back when things stabilized. They never stabilized. Not for him, not for Diane, and now I was done pretending they ever would. Thanksgiving was the last day I saw either of them in person, but the fallout, that was just beginning. The first text came the next morning, Diane asking if I'd really canceled the payment, followed by, "Can we please talk?" I didn't answer. I let her sit with it. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. 3 days later, Mark called. He never calls. Usually just sends short, needy texts like, "Hey, you around?" or "Got a sec?" This time it was a full call. I let it go to voicemail. He said he heard there was some misunderstanding at Thanksgiving and hoped it wasn't going to affect the family dynamic. That was his phrase, family dynamic. Like I was suddenly disrupting the natural order of things, like me pulling back after years of funding their lives was the problem. I didn't respond to that one either. What I did do was go into my email and cancel the automatic tuition payment for Josh's school. It wasn't out of spite. I just wasn't going to keep holding up a structure they kept spitting down from. A week later, Diane sent a longer message. She'd talked to the school. Tuition was due in 5 days. She didn't have it. Could I please just cover this semester and then they'd figure out the rest? She said she didn't want Josh to suffer over a miscommunication. But it wasn't a miscommunication. It was a moment of truth. A 7-year-old parrots what he hears. That kind of thing doesn't come from nowhere. And I realized as I read that message that she still didn't get it. She thought I'd snapped over one dinner. She didn't see the years before it. So I ignored that one too. Then my mom got involved. She called me that Sunday casually, like we were just catching up. She asked how work was, how the weather had been, and then she mentioned that Diane had told her I was going through something, that I'd cut her off without warning. I didn't tell my mom the whole story, just said I decided to set new boundaries. She got quiet, said she understood, but that family's family. I asked her if she knew I'd been paying Diane's bills for 3 years. She didn't. And then I asked her something I hadn't even realized I wanted to know. Did she ever wonder how Diane kept her house after the divorce, or how Mark kept avoiding eviction? My mom said she figured things had just worked out. They always think things just work out, because I make them work out. Over the next month, things started shifting. Diane's texts went from pleading to sharp. She said she hoped I was happy ruining a child's future over a stupid dinner comment. Mark started texting vague warnings, saying I was turning my back on blood and that karma would come for me. I didn't answer a single one. In January, Diane's power got shut off. She posted about it on Facebook. Vague post, passive-aggressive, something like, "Some people love watching you struggle." Our cousins commented with heart emojis and "stay strong girl" messages. One of them even tagged me. I didn't engage, but I saw everything, and I wrote it all down. Not out of pettiness, just clarity. By February, Mark had moved into Diane's house. His lease had run out, and shockingly, he hadn't been able to renew. The same house I used to help pay for now turned into a crash pad for 2 adults and a kid who all think I'm the broke one. The irony never stopped amusing me. And as things got worse for them, my life, for once, got quieter. I had more money in my savings than I'd had in years. I booked a trip to Denver just because I wanted to see the Rockies. I started sleeping better. But I knew it wouldn't stay quiet forever, because people like them never just sit in the consequences. They come crawling, and by spring, they did. By mid-March, they both started calling again, Diane and Mark. First separately, then together like a pathetic little team-up. Diane started it with a voicemail saying she was really ready to talk now, like this was a standoff and not the slow unraveling of her entire support system. Said she'd been thinking a lot, and maybe we both made mistakes. I didn't respond. 3 days later, Mark texted that he was worried about me, that I'd always been so generous, and he hated to see me pull away from the people who love you the most. Love me. That one made me laugh out loud. I couldn't remember the last time either of them had asked me how I was doing without following it up with a request for money. The next call came while I was in a meeting. I let it go to voicemail like all the others. Diane said she needed to be honest with me, that things had gotten really bad. The mortgage was behind. The power kept flickering. Josh was having trouble at school. Mark couldn't find steady work. She said she wasn't blaming me, but that they were drowning. Not blaming me, but somehow still holding the rope out. I didn't answer, but I listened again that night while I cooked dinner, and then I replayed it twice. Something about the tone of it. Not desperate, not angry, just defeated. It was the first real moment of honesty I'd heard from her in years. So I didn't respond. I'd seen this cycle too many times. One honest moment always followed by 2 manipulative ones. Then came the cousin. My cousin Jen, who never calls, suddenly invited me to lunch, just the 2 of us. I knew what it was before she said a word. I went anyway. She spent the first 20 minutes pretending it was just a normal catch-up, and then she finally said it. Diane had told her everything, that I'd cut them off cold, that they were struggling, that Josh was getting bullied at school for wearing cheap shoes, that I wasn't returning calls. I asked her one question. Did Diane tell you I paid her mortgage for 3 years? She didn't answer, just looked down at her water glass like the table was suddenly fascinating. I told her I didn't owe anyone an explanation, least of all people who only showed up when things got messy. Lunch ended early, I paid the check, and I never heard from Jen again. By April, Diane's house went up for sale. Not a nice, quiet listing either. A desperate, under-market scramble to avoid foreclosure. I didn't need to be told. I saw it online. Her name on the listing, the photos of the living room I'd once helped decorate for Christmas. Mark, from what I heard, was couch surfing again. He and Diane weren't speaking anymore. Probably blamed each other. Probably right too. I should have felt something. Sadness, satisfaction, bitterness, but mostly I felt relief, because they were finally living their lives without me holding them up. One cousin blocked me. Another reached out with some fake, "I just wanted to check on you" message. Word had spread. I'd gone cold. That was the term floating around the family. But here's the thing. Cold is what you become when warmth is mistaken for weakness. They had mistaken mine for years, and now that it was gone, they didn't know what to do with themselves. They hadn't hit bottom yet. Not quite, but they were falling, and I wasn't catching them. By May, everything went quiet. No texts, no calls, no awkward family messengers. I thought maybe they'd finally accepted it. Then a letter arrived. Not a bill, not a card. A handwritten envelope with Diane's name on it. Inside was a short note and an old photo. The note just said, "This was from better times. I miss who we used to be. Please read the back." The photo was from years ago. Me, Diane, and little Josh in a plastic kiddie pool. On the back, she'd written, "Summer 2015, Lauren makes everything better." For a second, it hit me. Not guilt, not regret. Just that ache of remembering someone who used to try. Someone who used to care. That was gone now. 2 days later, Mark sent me a Venmo request for $2,800. The note said, "Loan for family emergency. Will repay." I didn't even blink. I declined it. No explanation. Then I heard from someone at work that Mark had been telling people I ruined Diane's life. Said I went power hungry and cut them off because I like control. So that letter, that photo, it wasn't peace. It was bait. But then something I never saw coming. Josh showed up at my door. He was standing there with a woman I didn't know, a friend of Diane's. She said Diane dropped him off for the weekend, that she needed space. Josh handed me a folder full of his school drawings. One of them was a superhero named Rescue Woman, wearing a cape made of flying dollar bills. Looked like me. I called Diane. No answer. Texted. Nothing. So I let him stay. He slept on the couch like nothing in his world was falling apart. Diane called the next morning. Sounded hollow. Said she figured I'd say no, but had no one else. I didn't say much, just told her he was fine. That weekend, something shifted. I was still done funding adults who never learned, but I saw a kid who still had hope in the people around him, and I wasn't going to be the next person to let him down. After that weekend, Josh came over again and again. It started turning into a pattern, every other weekend, sometimes longer. Diane would send vague texts like, "You're the only one he's comfortable with right now," or "He really looks up to you." I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't do it for her. I did it because Josh was still a kid, and I remembered what it felt like to be surrounded by adults who only noticed you when it was convenient. I gave him structure, a quiet place, dinner that didn't come from a drive-thru. Somewhere in all this, I realized I was probably the most stable adult he had. Then in July, Diane showed up at my door. She looked worn out, like life had been pressing down for months without letting up. She didn't ask to come in, just stood there and said, "I need to tell you something." She had lost the house officially. The sale didn't cover everything, so she was couch surfing. Josh was staying with different friends during the week. She said she was trying to find steady work, maybe take some night classes. Then she said something that surprised me. "I never thanked you for everything, and I never should have let him say what he said at Thanksgiving." I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I finally saw it clearly. Diane wasn't evil. She was just small, always looking for a way out, always assuming someone would save her. And I had, for a long time. She asked one last thing, if Josh could stay with me for the rest of the summer just until school started again. I said yes. And that was the moment everything changed. The next week, Mark called and left a voicemail I didn't expect. He said I messed up. Said he knew he let a lot of people down, that he'd taken advantage of me, and he didn't blame me for cutting him off. Then he asked, for the first time in years, if we could talk. Not about money. I met him at a diner 2 days later. He looked rough, skinny, tired, quiet. He apologized, not with excuses, just said he was sorry. And I believed him. Then he asked if I could ever forgive him. I said I already had, but I also told him I wouldn't help anymore, not financially, not through guilt. I'd spent too long trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. I forgave him, but I was done being their foundation. He nodded, and for once he didn't ask for anything more. School started in late August. I got Josh into the local public school. Nothing fancy, but solid. Good teachers, no tuition. He didn't complain once. I bought him a new backpack, some clothes, a few supplies, set up a little homework station in the spare room. He adjusted fast, like he just needed a little gravity. Diane came by the night before his first day. She stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag with a few of his things. She looked thinner, worn down, but clearer somehow, like she'd finally stopped waiting for someone to fix her life and realized no one was coming. She didn't stay long, just said thanks. Said she was working part-time at a bakery now, saving up, sleeping on a friend's couch. She told me I didn't have to say anything, that she knew she'd messed up, that she was trying to be better, and that she knew the help was over for good. I told her she could still check in on him any time. She nodded, and that was it. No tears, no begging, just an exit that didn't make a mess. Fall moved in. Leaves started to drop. Josh got more comfortable, started making friends, brought home little art projects, and got hooked on baking shows. His superhero comic kept growing. Rescue Woman was still the lead, but now she had a sidekick named Tape Boy who fixed everything with duct tape and strange ideas. Then came Mark. I hadn't heard much from him since that day in the diner. He sent the occasional check-in, nothing dramatic. Then, in early October, he texted me a photo of his steel-toe boots and said, "Still on my feet." He'd gotten a warehouse job, third shift. Not glamorous, but steady. He didn't ask for money, didn't brag, just said he was sticking with it. For once, he didn't make himself the center of everything. Then 2 weeks ago, Diane called. She said she'd been approved for low-income housing, a small one-bedroom, but she was playing it safe. She asked if she could take Josh for the weekend, just to show him where they'd be living soon. I said yes. She came by that Saturday. Josh packed his bag and ran out to her car. She lingered in the doorway again. Said she knew I'd probably never go back to how I was before, always giving, always fixing. Said she didn't blame me. She said, "I get it now. I really do." I believed her, but that didn't change anything. I had forgiven both of them already. That part was over. But forgiveness isn't a restart button. I wasn't going to carry their weight anymore. They left, and the house felt different. Not empty, just lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't have any urgent text to check. No one waiting for a transfer. No one calling to ask for a small favor. They were figuring things out without me, and I wasn't waiting on their next crisis. I was finally living my life fully, quietly, on my own terms. That was the revenge. Not in what I took away from them, but in what I gave back to myself.